Here is a video about the first of the 3 homes where we 3 brothers grew up. But now we want to take a moment to remember our parents, whose care and dedication during every hour of our lives in these places made these memories possible. Our father, Roy Arthur Childers, and our mother, Margaret Inez Shepherd Childers, both came from large families of very modest means in western North Carolina. Roy in a remote cove of Swain County, and Inez on a small farm in North Buncombe County. Both families depended on the land in a way not very different than their ancestors from generations before. Roy received formal education only through the 4th grade and left home in his mid-teens to work in the logging operations then busy nearby in the Smoky Mountains. Next, he found employment in manufacturing jobs, first in rubber plants in Waynesville, North Carolina, and Akron, Ohio, and then as a weaver at Beacon Blanket Company in Swannanoa. There at Beacon, except during World War II, when he worked in a shipyard in Newport News, Virginia, he worked until retirement, quickly advancing to teach weaving to newcomers, and then to the job we remember, which he called loom fixer, actually a skilled mechanic for the complex power looms. Inez graduated from Flat Creek High School and then found employment, including room and board, in Asheville as an attendant to patients at the Appalachian Hall Psychiatric Hospital. There, she formed friendships with other staff which continued for decades. After a time, the physicians who managed the hospital recommended her to work as a nanny for the children of a Standard Oil executive and his wife, who were posted to Havana, Cuba. Her cheerful journal of the Havana time, which you can see at her wikitree.com profile, suggests that she was well valued by her employers, who seem to have treated her almost like one of the family. She returned from Cuba in 1936, and sometime afterward, we assume, she met Roy Childers. In August of 1938, Roy purchased that small house with a few acres of land on Beachree Road, a few miles north of Swannanoa. In December 1939, they were married and established their first home in a rented apartment in Black Mountain, just a few miles east of the Beacon plant. By the time the oldest one of us can remember, they were living at the place on Beachree Road, which I suspect Roy had been busy improving during the interim. Before we go there, I will cite a few of many enduring memories of my parents, all coincidentally from our last home, built in the mid-1950s. Mother, after supper, when the dishes were washed, dried, and put away, usually by her alone, I am now sorry to say, Mother would join the rest of us in the living room to watch Lawrence Welk, Jackie Gleason, or whatever it was, occasionally critiquing something she called that foolishness, but her attention was usually divided with the mending of socks, using a light bulb as a darning egg. Of course, her husband and 3 growing boys produced an endless supply of threadbare socks. Now I will balance that sweet, sad memory with another. Daddy loved fried oysters, so occasionally, as a special treat, Mother would add a pint of fresh oysters to Friday's shopping list. On Saturday evening, she would set about breading and frying the oysters. She would pry the lid off the can, and then, before making another move, she would pluck one oyster off the top and pop it into her mouth, with a look of pure glee, at which my eyes would open wide in absolute awe of her daring. Where did she learn to eat raw oysters, I wondered. I was well into my 20s before I confronted my first raw oyster. Several years after Daddy retired from Beacon, he and Mother bought, on a tip from Hoyt, a little antique cabin a few miles north. When I, then living in New York City, heard about it, I was eager to see it, and soon it became a magnet for me and a sort of joint project with Daddy, and my brothers were pulled in as well. Was it a vision of this connection with his sons that inspired him from the beginning? Perhaps. But we do know, directly from his own comments, that the place reminded him of his childhood home on Couch's Creek in Swain County. The old cabin sat in a private spot and had oodles of mountain charm, with its weathered board and batten siding. But there was no plumbing. The water source was this old natural spring, just beyond the front yard and across the tiny stream which flowed through the property. While the spring added greatly to the soul of the place, Daddy, who had a very practical side and loved projects, wanted to improve the convenience of access to the water. He engineered a system for capturing rainwater off the metal roof. It involved 3 old whiskey barrels, seen here in a photograph by Hoyt showing the whole house with the barrels in place along the back. And here's a partial view from a different, higher angle. He mounted the barrels on a raised platform just under the rear gutter so that the water flowed in by gravity and from there, when needed, directly into the kitchen sink, which was donated by Gerald and mounted on a platform by Hoyt. And the weathered barrels matched the look of the house exactly. But Daddy wasn't finished. Soon he found a second natural spring higher up around the hill from the first, excavated it, and built this reservoir to capture the flow and allow the water to be pumped into the house. Ben and I came to call the place Spring Cove and used it for many happy vacations. During one of those, guests from South Korea joined us, Mother, and Daddy for a lunch there, with Ben translating to and fro. Gerald's son Mark lived there for a time, and his daughter Michelle lived there at another time. Friends used it for a peaceful retreat or a temporary refuge in a time of need. And so it went, in one way or another, as long as Daddy was able. And now, for a quick orientation to the Beachy Road place. Here is a sketch of the parcel Daddy purchased in 1938, the year before our parents' marriage. And then added here, below the road, is the parcel they purchased in 1944, and where later they built a house to rent. Also note the creek below to the north and our little island at lower left. Our house is here, situated on the nice level area which ran all the way across the parcel to your right and left. Also note the garage and the garden to your left. Just behind the house, see this dotted line, which marks where the land slopes upward, even within the fenced area seen here, which provided a safe playing area for us. Note the cherry orchard here, including the all-important toilet. The only running water in the house was to the kitchen sink. And now the main feature, our conversations about our memories of the place and time.
You know, I can remember, have the vaguest recollection of the kind of the way the house with the yard in front of it and Beachy Road, and then the other little rental place across the road by the creek.
Yes.
Was it like dark brown or kind of reddish painted?
Reddish brown, yes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's all based. I remember going over there. I remember if you went up the steps in the Beechery house, there was a little porch. Is that right?
Yes, that's
And
right.
you went into what was the living room?
Yes,
Is that right?
that's
Okay.
right. Yes.
Yeah, okay. That's about all. And I remember I have this really, really vague memory of, I think it may have been when I was just like a toddler or something in a crib. I remember looking up onto, was there a hill behind the house where there was
Yes.
like a little pasture and there might have been a mule or a donkey or something?
Horse, I think.
A
I think
horse?
Daddy had a horse there, I think.
Okay. That I remember just looking through the window when I was just, a little kid, but and I think I have some vague recollection of doing Christmas there. But that's really about as far as it goes.
Now, tell me if, well, I can see here. All right. Here is can you see a picture of the layout of the house?
Yeah.
All right. And obviously the bottom of the picture is where you go up the steps onto the front porch and into the house. Now, there are a couple of things here that I thought of. One especially was that screened back porch, which is here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. My memory is that we ate out in the summertime in warm weather. We almost always ate out there, at least whenever we were all at home together. Now, if Daddy was working, maybe not, but I remember eating out there on that porch just almost routinely. Does either one of you remember that?
It's unreal. I can't remember that much about the inside of the house room.
So none of this rings a bell, what you're looking at here?
I have almost zero memory of the house.
I do too, a little of the outside, but none of the inside.
I have some vague remember of having a Christmas tree in the living room one time, but
Yeah.
that's about just.
All right, well, okay, anyway, so I just wanted to highlight that that back porch, in my memory, loomed large. That was a frequent place because it was screened in all the way around.
Yeah.
And had a screen door. So it was completely secure from bugs and such. The other interesting story here to me is if you notice the door from the living room into the bedroom there, and then in the bedroom, turning right, there's a door to the kitchen.
Yeah.
And then from the kitchen, of course, there's a door into the living room, which is here. I think on rainy days, probably, this is a vague memory, but we might have been guilty of racing around through that, making that circle. I don't know. But I do remember vividly one time, this was while you were just about to enter the world. And because Mother was going to be in the hospital for your birth, and also then when she came home, she'd be pretty unable to do anything much. Daddy found somehow, and I don't know how, through some family connections, he found a young woman out in Buncombe County. And I wish I could remember the name, but I can't. I'm inclined to think it was one, there were actually two. There's a second, she had a sister. But one name I remember is Frances, and I don't know if that was the first one. Anyway, she came to do the work. She was going to stay there, sleep in, and be there a few days to help out and to babysit. Do you remember this, Gerald?
Yeah, I do. I believe, if I ain't mistaken, I believe I went with Daddy to get her.
Oh, okay. Do you remember the name?
Sure don't.
Anyway, my memory is the first, the one who came was kind of blondish hair. Very nice, very likable, warm, playful. In fact, a little bit too playful because she loved to make that circuit, to race around there. And I think it was maybe over in this corner, we had maybe a kind of a platform rocker. What in those days was an easy chair, like a precursor to a lazy boy. She loved to make that circle. I guess it was that way. my memory, she went from the bedroom and then to the kitchen and like that. And may get a good head of steam up and then go and fling herself into that chair and just giggle. And it was very entertaining, of course. My memory is that we thought it was great. Well, apparently somebody thought it wasn't so great because she was taken back to Macon County. And her sister was brought back. And my memory is she had darker hair.
That's the one I remember, the one that had the dark hair.
But you remember her.
Yeah.
And my memory is that she was, I don't know if she'd been warned or her just personality was different, but my memory is she survived.
Yeah.
And helped out until Mother was able to pick up and resume being up and around and caring for us. But I just thought that's one of my vivid memories of that.
On the diagram of the house there, hold it up again.
All right.
They're going from the living room into the kitchen.
Yes.
That little offshoot there. I wonder what the purpose of that was.
Well, that's why I drew that there. I'm not sure I got it right exactly. It may be that it went further back. I don't know how far back it went, but the point of it was that was a pantry.
Oh, okay.
So if you were in the kitchen, and it was
okay.
one of my favorite places in the whole house because it was dark and you could get in there and hide and whatever. So you come in, step in here.
Okay.
You know, I'm not clear where this wall was really. I don't remember it being a tight turn. I kind of remember it being as if the kitchen wall went all the way back here. But we don't have a picture of that, of the house at that point. So anyway, you entered it and went back in here. And I remember Mother stored her churn back there, probably her washing machine, which was one of those ringers that you'd roll out, right? And whatever else, and I think there were shelves, so food could be stacked back there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if either of you remember that room at all. There are pictures of showing you, Gerald, when you were a bouncing new baby. And there are several pictures of Mother having you in a chair. And there's one of Daddy holding you, same chair, you're in the chair, it's the same chair in all the pictures. And in the ones he has, there's the house in the background is it's a weathered wood, partly horizontal siding and part board and batten vertical siding. Then Mother has you in that same chair, but away from the house, with what to me looks like the orchard, the cherry orchard in the background. And so it's a mystery. I vaguely think it is that house, but if that's the cherry orchard, if that is our cherry orchard, it is a house. But then the siding is nothing that I ever remember seeing because I only remember the asbestos siding.
That's what I remember.
And I remember that because I watched the carpenter cut it and put it on. And I sat close by him, hunkered down on the ground while he was clipping that asbestos siding. And so apparently that wasn't instantly fatal. It may still prove fatal, but.
Well, what was there before the siding then, if you remember that and putting it on?
Oh, yes. Well, that's right. It's curious, but I don't remember what the house looked like before he put the siding on, is the thing. I remember him putting the siding on, but I don't remember what was under there. I don't remember it as being weathered wood.
I don't either. I don't remember what it was.
So
But
maybe
I remember the construction going on, him putting siding on.
Yeah.
Well, that would be logical though, that's what it was board and batten siding or the horizontal side or the clapboard siding, shiplap siding, because that was what everybody used pretty much.
Yeah, that's right. And it wasn't a new house. After we had this discussion, I found this photograph showing Daddy and young Gerald sitting astride our mare Dolly, I think, in what seems to be our yard. Note the wire fence pattern. But the house has painted horizontal siding, and the porch roof is a shed, not the gable which we remember, and is shown in all of our other photos of the house. Perhaps this is an interim view after the photos of Gerald as a new baby, but before the white asbestos siding we all remember. The other thing that I just, before we get away from this, that I'll mention is that, because it's related to the status of the house. Back here, what was, we think of as Gerald's bedroom, but I think I slept back there too. The curious thing is, can you kind of see the kind of dotty line that I've made here?
Yeah.
I did that to indicate that there was an unusual set of high, small windows.
I remember those.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Above they were high enough so the bed could be placed underneath the window or a chest of drawers or something all the way around. But there were lots of windows, as I remember it, on both sides.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, Hoyt, since you talked about, remember looking up at the hill from inside the house and seeing the hill, if maybe you were looking up through those particular windows, because those were really the only window, unless you were looking up from the screen porch.
I was going to say it was probably either that or the screen porch. Yeah.
So anyway, I just thought, I was very aware of those windows because they were so different than the windows in all the other rooms. The other rooms had typical vertical, double hung windows with a slide up sash.
I remember the small, like you said, the small windows up high.
Yeah. I think if you were standing, an adult standing up would look straight out.
Yeah.
But they were, it may be high enough probably for you.